Ugh, that came too quickly. All right. So we are picking up on page 86, line 203, right at the bottom of the page. Swiftly she turned and led him to her cave, and they went in, the mortal and immortal. He took the chair left empty now by Hermes, where the divine Calypso placed before him victuals and drink of men. Then she sat down facing Odysseus, while her serving maids brought nectar and ambrosia to her side. So this is just an interesting eating point. She eats ambrosia and drinks nectar. Odysseus eats normal food of mortals. And they each ate their own thing. Kind of interesting. Then each one's hands went out on each one's feast until they had their pleasure. And she said, Son of Laertes, versatile Odysseus, after these years with me, you still desire your old home? Even so, I wish you well. If you could see it all before you go all the adversity you face at sea, you would stay here and guard this house and be immortal, though you wanted her forever, that bride for whom you pine each day. Can I be less desirable than she is? Less interesting, less beautiful? Can mortals compare with goddesses in grace and form? Okay, coming up is another term, but versatile and strategist, sorry. Um, these are ways that Odysseus is referred to many times. So here's our first example since he's just come onto the scene. And basically, um, Calypso is asking him these questions, trying to find out why he wants to go back to Penelope anyway. She's just a mortal woman. Can she be less desirable, less interesting, less beautiful? Penelope can't compare with the gods and goddesses. So why does he want to go back? And to his credit, Odysseus does want to go back. He wants to go home, wants to be with Penelope again. He's not content with Calypso. He is weeping and staring out to the ocean. So there is some good in him. He's not a total bad guy here. To this, the strategist Odysseus answered, My lady goddess, here is no cause for anger. My quiet Penelope, how well I know, would seem a shade before your majesty, death and old age being unknown to you, while she must die. Yet it is true each day I long for home, long for the sight of home. If any god has marked me out again for shipwreck, my tough heart can undergo it. What hardship have I not long since endured at sea in battle? Let the trial come. Now, as he spoke, the sun set. Dusk drew on, and they retired, this pair, to the inner cave to revel and rest softly side by side. We get the G-rated version, thankfully. When dawn spread out her fingertips of rose, Odysseus pulled his tunic and his cloak on, while the sea nymph, dressed in a silvery gown of subtle tissue, drew about her waist a golden belt and veiled her head, and then took thought for the great-hearted hero's voyage. A brazen axe head first she had to give him, two-bladed and agreeable to the palm, with a smooth-fitting haft of olive wood. Next, a well-polished adze. And that's something that is also like an axe, but maybe more like a grub axe, if any of you have seen that. And then she led him to the island's tip, where bigger timber grew, besides the alder and the poplar, tall pine trees, long dead and seasoned, that would float him high. Showing him in that place her stand of timber, the loveliest of nymphs took her way home. Now the man fell to chopping. When he paused, 20 tall trees were down. He lopped the branches, split the trunks, and trimmed his puncheons true. A puncheon is a log that is then smoothed on one side. So right away, we're getting some physical description of Odysseus. If any of you have ever tried to chop down a tree, using an axe is rough work. And even to chop down one tree is a lot of work. He doesn't stop until 20 tall trees are chopped down. So we know that he is powerful. Meanwhile, Calypso brought him an auger tool with which he drilled through all his planks, then drove stout pins to bolt them, fitted side by side. A master shipwright building a cargo vessel lays down a broad and shallow hull. Just so Odysseus shaped the bottom of his craft. He made his decking fast to close-set ribs before he closed the side with longer planking, then cut a mast pole and a proper yard and shaped a steering oar to hold her steady. He drove long strands of willow in all the seams to keep out waves and ballasted with logs. As for a sail, the lovely nymph Calypso brought him a cloth so he could make that too. Then he ran up his rigging, halyards, braces, and hauled the boat on rollers to the water. So a halyard is a line or rope that will help him to hoist the sail. So O makes his raft. Calypso brings him cloth for a sail. And there's a lot of description detail. So you can tell that either our poet Homer is familiar with how this would be done, or he's asked around, or, it's embellished. All right, continuing on here, bottom of page 88. This was the 4th day when he had all ready. On the 5th day, she sent him out to sea, but first she bathed him, gave him a scented cloak, and put on board a skin of dusky wine, with water in a bigger skin, and stores, boiled meats and other victuals in a bag. Then she conjured a warm land breeze to blowing. Joy for Odysseus when he shook out sail. Now the great seaman, leaning on his oar, steered all the night unsleeping, and his eyes picked out the Pleiades, the laggard ploughman, and the Great Bear, that some have called the Wain, pivoting in the sky before Orion. Of all the night's pure figures, she alone would never bathe or dip in the ocean stream. All right, so he sets out. It's 5 days that it takes until his raft is all finished. And he's looking at the stars and naming out the different stars that he is going to sail by. These stars, the beautiful Calypso bade him hold on his left hand as he crossed the main. 17 nights and days in the open water he sailed before a dark shoreline appeared. Sciri, or Skiria here is how it's spelled, then came slowly into view like a rough shield of a bull's hide on the sea. So keep in mind this number, 17 days. Remember, Zeus had declared 20 days. So he's within sight of the land of the Phaeacians. You can guess something's going to happen. Next portion here, page 89. But now the god of earthquake, storming home over the mountains of Asia from the sunburned land, sighted him far away. The god grew sullen and tossed his great head, muttering to himself. Yep, you bet it. God of the earthquake. And that's Poseidon, of course. And he sees that Odysseus is on his way, and he gets very upset. Who let him out on my ocean again? Here is a pretty cruise. While I was gone, the gods have changed their minds about Odysseus. Look at him now, just offshore of that island that frees him from the bondage of his exile. Still, I can give him a rough ride in and will. So he knows that the gods have decreed something new. And he can't overrule that, but he can make it miserable. Brewing high thunderheads, he churned the deep with both hands on his trident, called up wind from every quarter, and sent a wall of rain to blot out land and sea in torrential night. Hurricane winds now struck from the south and east, shifting northwest in a great spume of seas, on which Odysseus's knees grew slack. His heart sickened, and he said within himself, Rag of man that I am, is this the end of me? I fear the goddess told it all too well, predicting great adversity at sea and far from home. Now all things bear her out, the whole roundure of heaven hooded so by Zeus in woeful cloud, and the sea raging under such winds. I am going down, that's sure. So he thinks how Calypso had said he was going to have adversity and trouble at sea. And he's like, yep, that's true.